In a small town in the United States called Norwood, there was a little blue house with a beautiful flower garden in front, the residence of James Madison and Laura, a young couple who had just sealed the bonds of matrimony. But before the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and let us know in the comments what you thought of the video. James was a joyful man, with a passion for life that was infectious to everyone around him. He had brown hair, deep blue eyes, and a smile that could light up any room. He loved sports, was always surrounded by friends, and had a stable job at a small publishing house in town. Life, at first, seemed like a dream for James. Laura, on the other hand, was a gentle, caring young woman. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital and had a maternal way that calmed everyone around her. She had long blonde hair and light brown eyes, which sparkled with love and compassion. They complemented each other, and together, they made a perfect pair. The two had met in school and grown up together, always present in each other's lives. When James proposed, Laura did not hesitate for a second, and they married in a small ceremony at the local church. However, there was one element that had always played a crucial role in James's life: his mother. Mrs. Madison was a woman of fiber, strong, but with a kindness that radiated. She was James's rock, the person who always supported him in all moments of life. Mrs. Madison, however, was ill. She was battling a terminal disease that slowly consumed her. James cared for her with the same devotion and love that she had shown him all his life. And Laura, the new addition to the family, was also by his side, supporting her husband and mother-in-law. Mrs. Madison's illness was a shock to James's life. He watched the woman who had always been there for him become a shadow of what she once was. Despite this, he tried to keep a smile on his face, to provide strength for his mother and wife. On a peaceful afternoon, when the sun was setting on the horizon and tinting the sky orange and purple, Mrs. Madison took her last breath. James, who was by her side, holding her hand, felt the world crumble around him. He looked at Laura, tears soaking his blue eyes, and knew life would never be the same. Mrs. Madison's funeral was a somber occasion, filled with tears and farewells. The small town of Norwood had never been so quiet. James, who had always been a pillar of strength for everyone, was now desolate, his gaze empty. The loss of his mother marked the beginning of a dark period in James's life. A shadow seemed to fall over the little blue house, and the life that had once seemed so perfect was now tinged with the pain of loss. Following the death of Mrs. Madison, a heavy silence settled over the once jovial household. The sweet scent of blooming flowers in their garden seemed to fade away, replaced by a harsh winter cold that seeped into the cracks of their once warm home. James was no longer the lively man he used to be. His eyes lost their sparkle, replaced with a haunted emptiness that reflected the turmoil within. Laura watched helplessly as her husband's once radiant spirit was gradually consumed by a profound depression. His laughter no longer filled their home, replaced by a silence so profound it was deafening. He began to withdraw from life, spending long hours staring blankly into the void, his heart heavy with a grief he couldn't express. In an attempt to cope with his loss, James sought solace in his work. However, the void left by his mother's absence was too vast to be filled. His usual punctuality at work dwindled, he missed deadlines, and his once meticulous work ethic crumbled. His behavior didn't go unnoticed, and one dreary Tuesday morning, James was summoned by his boss. With stern eyes, Mr. Thompson, the owner of the small publishing house, regarded James from across his mahogany desk. He had been a friend of Mrs. Madison and was aware of the pain James was going through. However, business was business. After a long silence, he uttered the words that sent another wave of despair washing over James. He was being let go. The news hit James like a ton of bricks. He walked out of the publishing house, a pink slip in his hand, and a growing sense of worthlessness in his heart. He was now jobless, adding to the burden his wife was already bearing. They had bills to pay, mouths to feed, and with only Laura's salary, they were in for a rough ride. James spiraled even further into depression, his world revolving around his grief and self-pity. He started spending his days locked away in his study, staring at the blank pages that once used to be filled with his imaginative stories. His nights were filled with haunting nightmares, a cruel replay of his mother's last moments. Laura bore the brunt of this tragedy. She worked long hours at the hospital, trying to compensate for the sudden loss of income. She would return home exhausted, only to find James in his study, a picture of desolation. Her heart ached for her husband, but she felt powerless, unsure of how to pull him out of his desolation. Their once warm home was slowly turning into a cold house filled with unspoken words and lingering sadness. Each passing day became a challenge as they struggled to keep their heads above water. The grief that had once united them was now driving a wedge between them. They barely spoke to each other, and when they did, their conversations were filled with bitterness and regret. Laura missed her husband's once radiant smile, his enthusiastic stories about his day, and the way he made her laugh. James, on the other hand, missed his mother, his job, and the sense of normality he used to take for granted. Despite the growing distance between them, Laura remained a pillar of support for James. She made countless attempts to bring him back to the world of the living, but her efforts seemed to sink into the abyss of his grief. She was fighting a losing battle but refused to give up. She loved James, and she was determined to help him, no matter what it took. Months passed, and the silence within the Madison household grew heavier, more profound. James found himself slipping further into an abyss of despair, while Laura watched him with growing concern. But it was not only the melancholy that was consuming their relationship, financial burdens were also weighing them down. Laura was doing her best to make ends meet. Working double shifts at the hospital was wearing her out, yet she put on a brave face, trying to keep the sinking ship afloat. She still had hope that James would somehow find a way back to himself, and they could once again be the loving couple they used to be. Seeking help, Laura decided to invest in therapy for James, using the last of their savings. She hoped that professional guidance would provide him with a fresh perspective and the tools to cope with his overwhelming grief. James started his therapy sessions with Dr. Rebecca Arnold, a highly regarded psychologist known for her work with grief-stricken patients. She was a tall, slender woman with sharp features and an empathetic smile. Her office was a warm, inviting place, a sanctuary where James could lay bare his pain. In the beginning, the therapy sessions seemed promising. James started to open up, sharing his feelings and fears with Dr. Arnold. He spoke about his mother, his feelings of guilt for not being there enough for her, his job loss, and how he felt like he was failing Laura. But as time went on, the sessions took an unexpected turn. Dr. Arnold began suggesting to James that his deep-seated sorrow might be rooted not just in his mother's death, but also in the responsibilities of his marriage. She implied that his commitments might have created an emotional prison, leading to his current state of mind. James, vulnerable and susceptible to influence, started seeing things through a distorted lens. He began blaming his marriage for his miseries, reasoning that he might have been happier if he hadn't been tied down. The once strong bond of love between Laura and James started to crumble, replaced by resentment and guilt. In his delusion, James began developing feelings for Dr. Arnold, misinterpreting her professional attention for personal affection. The lines between patient and therapist blurred, further fueling his misguided belief. Laura, oblivious to this development, was glad to see James appearing more engaged. But she couldn't shake off a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. There was a shift in James's demeanor, a distant look in his eyes that she couldn't quite understand. Then one day, she returned home from a grueling night shift to find the house empty. A note left on the kitchen table read, "I need space to figure things out." James had left. Laura sat in the silence of their home, the note crumpled in her hand, tears streaming down her face. She felt a sense of betrayal and abandonment. But amidst the whirlpool of emotions, she discovered she was pregnant. In the wake of James's departure, Laura was left alone in a house filled with memories. Each room echoed with the sound of their shared laughter, the ghost of their love hanging heavy in the air. But amidst the wreckage of her broken heart, Laura found a glimmer of hope in the tiny life growing inside her. Over the weeks, the realization of impending motherhood slowly replaced her initial shock and heartbreak. She found herself looking forward to the little signs of the life within her, the flutter in her belly, the tiny bump growing each day. It was a bittersweet symphony, the joy of becoming a mother intertwined with the pain of her husband's betrayal. But being alone and pregnant with a dwindling income was not easy. Laura worked as much as her condition allowed, her motherly instincts already kicking in. She wanted to provide the best for her unborn child, even if it meant bearing the burden alone. One day, as she was returning from work, Laura met Henry, an old friend. Henry had always been a kind-hearted soul, and when he heard of Laura's predicament, he felt a strong urge to help her. Wealthy and well-settled, Henry had always had a soft spot for Laura, even when she was with James. Henry offered to step in and support Laura, both emotionally and financially. He made it clear that his intentions were noble, that he didn't expect anything in return. Laura was hesitant at first, wary of accepting help, but the kind man's sincerity won her over. As Laura let Henry into her life, she began to experience a sense of calm. Henry proved to be a pillar of strength, always there to lend a helping hand, to share a kind word, to offer a shoulder to lean on. He accompanied her to doctor appointments, helped her around the house, and made sure she was taking care of herself. Soon, Laura found herself looking forward to Henry's visits. His warm smile, his gentle demeanor, and his genuine concern for her well-being began to mend her broken heart. She felt a sense of security with him, a solace she hadn't experienced since James had left. Slowly and cautiously, Laura began to let Henry into her heart. They shared laughter, tears, and eventually, their feelings. What began as a friendship morphed into a loving relationship. Henry was respectful of Laura's past and patient with her fears. He accepted her and her unborn child, promising to stand by them. Laura, in turn, learned to trust again, finding love amidst the ruins of her past. Meanwhile, James, oblivious to these developments, continued his life with Dr. Arnold. He remained unaware of Laura's pregnancy and the man who had stepped in to fill his shoes. James's life with Dr. Arnold was not the haven he had envisioned. What began as an escape soon revealed itself to be a mirage. Their relationship was built on the vulnerability of a patient and the inappropriate involvement of a therapist, a foundation that soon began to crack under the weight of reality. James was haunted by feelings of guilt and regret. He missed Laura, her smile, her laughter, the warmth of their shared love. As the illusion of his newfound freedom shattered, he found himself trapped in a world of his creation, a prisoner of his choices. On the other side, Laura's life was taking a turn for the better. With Henry by her side, she was experiencing the joys of life once again. They moved into a bigger, brighter home, filled with laughter and love. Henry proved to be a doting partner, always there for Laura and their unborn child. His kindness and care filled Laura's life with a sense of peace and stability she hadn't felt in a long time. The day finally came when Laura gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. They named her Lily, a symbol of purity and hope. The birth of Lily seemed to heal Laura, giving her a renewed purpose. She was a mother now, responsible for a life that was her own flesh and blood. Her world revolved around Lily, her smiles, her cries, her tiny little hands holding onto Laura's fingers. James, meanwhile, was spiraling into a pit of remorse and despair. He realized the gravity of his mistakes and longed for a way to mend things. He decided to break free from his life with Dr. Arnold, packing his belongings and leaving one day without a word. In his longing to make amends, James sought out Laura. He was taken aback when he found their old home empty, a deafening silence echoing in the deserted rooms. He felt a pang of regret, a bitter reminder of the life he had willingly left behind. Determined to find Laura, he searched for her, finally discovering her new home with Henry. James arrived unannounced, his heart pounding in his chest as he rang the doorbell. When Laura opened the door, the sight of her took his breath away. She looked different, more radiant, more mature. The moment he laid eyes on Lily, he knew. The baby had Laura's eyes, his mother's smile. He was a father. The revelation was overwhelming. He felt a mixture of joy, guilt, and despair. He had missed the birth of his child, her first smile, her first word. Regret gnawed at him, the pain of his decisions hitting him harder than ever. James confessed his mistakes to Laura, begging for forgiveness. But Laura, stronger now, told him it was too late. He had made his choice, and she had made hers. Henry was Lily's father in every way that mattered. James had forfeited his right to be a part of their lives when he left them. The fallout of James' unexpected visit was profound. Laura was shaken, a mix of old wounds reopened and new resolve forming. She held Lily closer, her small frame serving as a reminder of everything Laura had to protect. Henry, ever supportive, held them both. In his arms, Laura found the strength to continue, to push past the ghost of James that had suddenly reappeared in their lives. Henry was the man who had been there through it all, the true father figure in Lily's life. It was in his warmth, his quiet strength, that Laura found solace. On the other side of the city, James was lost in a sea of regret. He saw the life he had thrown away, the love he had forsaken for a lie. The reality of his loss was devastating, the emptiness he felt profound. His life felt hollow, each day a monotonous reminder of his mistakes. James found himself yearning for redemption. He sought it in solitude, in regretful contemplation of his past actions. Slowly, he began to understand the depth of his errors, the hurt he had caused. This understanding did not come easy. It was a painful process, a dissection of the lies he had lived, the truths he had ignored. In this self-reflection, James started to change. He sought professional help, understanding now the importance of ethical boundaries in therapy. He cut off all contact with Dr. Arnold, focusing instead on rebuilding his life, this time on a foundation of truth and introspection. Meanwhile, Laura's life blossomed in the presence of Henry and Lily. Her days were filled with joyous moments, milestones in Lily's life. Laura's heart swelled with love each time she saw Henry cradling Lily, their bond evident in the tender smiles they exchanged. Her world, once shattered, was whole again. James, in his journey of redemption, took steps towards rebuilding his life. He started working again, finding solace in the routine. He started penning his thoughts, his feelings, his regrets, his newfound realizations, his hopes. Writing became therapeutic, a conduit to channel his remorse and his longing for forgiveness. His writings took the shape of a book. A memoir, an honest account of his misjudgments, his fall, and his ongoing journey towards self-improvement. His words were raw and sincere, a poignant testament to his regret and his efforts to make amends. This final chapter starts with the release of James's memoir. It becomes an unexpected bestseller, with readers drawn to his raw honesty and the poignant portrayal of his journey from self-destruction to redemption. But more than the success, it's the catharsis of letting his story be heard that brings James solace. News of the book reaches Laura, who hesitantly buys a copy. As she flips through the pages, she finds herself immersed in James's world, experiencing his guilt, his remorse, and his struggle for redemption. His words stir up mixed emotions in her, reopening old wounds, but also offering a sense of closure. In the quiet of the night, once Lily is asleep and Henry is busy with his work, Laura takes time to process James's journey. She sees the pain he endured, his struggle to come to terms with his mistakes. It's a raw, human struggle, one that Laura finds herself unexpectedly empathizing with. The book serves as a silent bridge between Laura and James. Laura, seeing James's growth, can't help but feel a glimmer of the fondness she once held for him. It doesn't reignite old love, but it kindles a new sense of understanding and unspoken forgiveness. Meanwhile, James continues his life on the path of redemption. He has found a new job, one that he finds fulfilling. He has cut all ties with Dr. Arnold and has taken steps to ensure he'll never fall into such a destructive pattern again. His life is simpler now, free of deceit and guided by a newfound sense of purpose and self-understanding. Laura and Henry's life is a picture of contentment. Lily, growing up in a household filled with love, is a lively child, her laughter a constant joy in their home. Henry continues to be the rock of the family, his love for Laura and Lily unwavering. Despite the turbulence in her past, Laura's life now is full of happiness and stability. One day, Laura sends James a letter, thanking him for his honesty and expressing her forgiveness. She tells him about Lily, about their life, and subtly suggests that while he may not be part of their lives, he would always be a part of Lily's story. It's a letter filled with empathy, understanding, and an invitation for James to forgive himself. James, upon reading Laura's letter, finds himself overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. He writes back, expressing his heartfelt thanks and his joy at knowing Laura and Lily are happy and well-loved. Did you like this story? Comment below what you think and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.